You know, I was not the most happy with my bike that year. I got a little too cocky when I was 7. I broke my femur and then I ruptured my spleen out in the dunes, and that was about to be the end of it. In surgery, things went wrong, and I was in surgery for 2 days for about like 17 hours. And that one got so bad, for quite a while they wanted to amputate it. I was like, man, I don't know if this is worth it anymore. Won every single moto after taking like a full year off from injury.
There's not too many people in the world that can say they've passed James Stewart, full stop. So to be able to do that kind of race, that must have been pretty good.
It was pretty memorable.
This week we get to speak to a rider that has probably more talent on a motorbike in his little finger than any of us mere mortals could dream of. Josh Hill, welcome back to Australia, mate.
Yeah, thanks, man. It's good to be out here.
Now, you've been coming to Australia for quite a lot of years now, something like 10 years, back and forward, doing different series.
Yeah, the first year I came and did the last year I came and did the entire series was 10 years ago, and yeah, back at it for the whole thing this year. I'm pretty pumped.
You enjoy your time coming back to Australia and racing the series? I mean, everywhere you go in the world, there's obviously different series, different feels. How do you find it in Australia?
I love coming here. I mean, just everything about coming here. It's just, it feels so much, like, where I grew up in the States, but, it's so different at the same time. So it's exciting to come, and people are always great, have the best time over here. And, the quality of racing is, it's top notch. And when I get a ride for the CDR team, everything's really top notch. It's about as good of a home as anywhere in the world.
Now let's go back to where it all started for you. What age, whereabouts, how did you get into motocross?
So my dad was a pro freestyle BMX rider in the 80s. He rode for GT and Dyno, did vert riding. His claim to fame is he invented the turn down back in the 80s. So yeah, when he had me at, I think he was 20 years old, and quit doing that and got back on dirt bikes. And so I was pretty much, from the time I was born, I was just at the local track watching my dad. And I mean, from my earliest memory in life is riding a dirt bike. My grandpa had a tool store in Portland, Oregon, and there was a little field behind it, and they got me a JR50, and I could barely I looked like a trials rider. I was going so slow on it, but yeah, I loved it. Just first thing I wanted to do was jump.
Going through what we call juniors, or I guess your amateur career, you said you want to be a great jumper, and you weren't too fazed about racing as such at the time. When did racing start to become serious for you at that point?
So my dad, I was always pretty good at racing at a local level. I could win a lot of my age group stuff, and so we started going to like the World Minis. I think the first time I went to World Minis, I was 5 years old on a 50 and racing with Michael Alessi, and that was the first time I met Michael Alessi. I was 5 years old. He was kind of the guy. He was a year older than me, and on the cover, on magazines and all that. So that was the start of it, and I think I got 5th, at the first one we went to, and then I just kind of would ride in the backyard. My dad had basically a Supercross track in the backyard, and every day he'd just go out there and try to get me to jump something new. And he would teach me how to jump by learning okay, you can jump this, but you can also case this, and I just learned how to ride and jump and be really safe at it. And I got a little too cocky when I was 7. I broke my femur and then I ruptured my spleen out in the dunes, and that was about to be the end of it. And my dad, the new KTM 60s had just hit the market. My dad's like, you want to race World Minis? And it's like, okay, yeah. So I rode for about 2-3 weeks and then showed up to World Minis and won every single moto after taking like a full year off from injuries. And then at that point it was like, okay, maybe there's something to this other than just playing around having fun in the yard.
I was going to bring it up a little later in this, but it's a good time now. Those skills that you learned at an early age, we're seeing that now with the reintroduction of the 85cc's into the Supercross. I know for myself, we raced Supercross all of our life from 12-year-old as a junior. How important is it to get those skills early?
Oh man, for me, I know there's a lot of kids out there that even when they are about to turn pro, they're still kind of afraid to jump and afraid to do some of these things. And from an early age, I wouldn't jump anything that I didn't think that I was almost 99% chance it was going to work out good for me. But luckily my dad was really good at riding dirt bikes and jumping, and he had a Supercross track in the backyard for him, and then he'd take I'd double the triple. And then, once I was doubling the triple and he knew I could triple it, he'd turn the triple into a tabletop. Next thing you know, I'm doing a full-size Supercross triple on an 80. And so just that slow progression, and luckily having, a father that was so involved and so dialed into two wheels, it saved me from a lot of pitfalls.
Younger brother, I should say, Justin, he obviously got into riding as well with you, I guess, at a fairly young age. Was there any time during your younger years where you felt you pushed each other along? Was it an advantage at all, do you think?
Justin was the kid running around the track with a Gatorade lip around, or ring around his lips, playing in the dirt with his toy dirt bike. Sometimes he'd make his motos, sometimes he'd forget, but he was always really fast. It was just like, you never knew if he was showing up there to try to win or if he just wanted to go hang out and throw a ball around with his buddies. So I guess he always had the potential to do it, but we were so far age difference that we were never really competition. And then back in 2010, when I had the backflip crash and got real hurt, I think Justin was 14 or 15 at that time, and it was right around that time that he just totally stepped it up and started putting in all this work and training, and just kind of turned into an animal for a few years, and earned himself a ride on the pro circuit team.
We'll touch on the backflip in a minute because it's a pretty pivotal part of your career. Let's go back to 2007 though. Turning pro onto a big team, getting a third in the championship for that year. How was that year though for you?
I think as good as I felt coming into that year and as confident as I was coming out of amateurs, getting third that year was kind of a disappointment. I just didn't have all the tools to put it together that year, and a third on paper doesn't sound that bad. I lost to Jason Lawrence and Villapoto, and I beat a lot of big name guys. That was a stacked year that year. So looking back, it wasn't that bad, but I was not the most happy with my bike that year. Had a lot of bike issues, and luckily I was able to talk the guys into letting me ride a 450 the next year, and I was able to actually go out and win at 18, on a 450, and that's where I really started to come into my own, I think.
Now that'd have to be pretty special, right? A victory straight off the bat on 450s, that'd be a dream that everyone wants to achieve.
Yeah, it was just one of those things. I got to ride with the best guys. I learned so much from Chad and Grant Langston, and just had some really good guys around me, and I had the confidence, like I could go to the track and keep pace with them, and on a good day that maybe they were phoning it in, I could be a little bit, maybe I could walk away with a little confidence, like I was faster than those guys that day. So, but I never really thought of myself as at that level. So it was when I won, it was kind of like, whoa, I just won this. Like it wasn't like I really went to the line like, oh, I'm gonna win tonight. Just put myself in the position and made it happen. And then from then on, I started to, I guess, take myself a little bit more seriously, and knowing that on a certain night I could be the best in the world that night.
I guess when we do get to that level, I've only experienced it on such a small level, but for you guys, there's so many fast riders that are on paper more than equal when it comes to the racing side of it. The mental game has to come into it quite a bit at that point.
Definitely. I mean, I look back at myself, when I was at that age, and I was just a kid, and I was just trying to learn how to live life, and I didn't know anything. I was just happened to be really good on dirt bikes because that's what I like to do for fun, and that's what my family devoted so much time into, taking me to the track and letting me pursue that. So the mental side of things, I mean, I had so much to learn, and it was just, yeah. You always wish you could go back, right, and tell your younger self what you know now.
Yes, so much. So much agree on that. Things will be completely different. I 100% agree with that. So 2008, you got your first win. You collected a heap of podiums as well, so it'd have to be a pretty good year for you.
Yeah, that was an amazing year. I won a bunch of heat races, and I think I finished behind Chad, second on the podium 3 or 4 times that year. And it was just always up front, fastest qualifier, quite a few weekends, and just was always kind of a threat to be on the podium or to win. And I knew that I had the ability, but again, it wasn't like nobody around me gave me that pressure. I didn't really even put that pressure on myself. I would just show up, and if I was feeling it that night, then we'd make it happen.
Moving forward through, obviously, your racing career, I'm going to jump straight across to the backflip incident. When I did freestyle, it didn't even have a name, freestyle. And then, I moved back into my racing, but then I saw the backflips, and I always thought to myself, what would it be like? Could I do it? Could I bring myself to do it? And I don't think I ever could, but you actually did, but it was a bit of a turning point for you.
Yeah, for me, that was, I just had my best year yet when I was 20 years old, 2 years after the first win, and, I was tied for the championship with Dungey right at, almost the halfway point, had a little injury, and just kind of had to ride the rest of the season out. But I was on a Supercross only contract, and X Games was doing speed and style, and had a Supercross event, and I wanted to ride both. So, yeah, I just told myself, I knew I could I just looked like fun. I'm like, I want to learn how to flip. And looking back, I rushed it a little bit. I spent one day with Matto in the foam pit, and flipped a bunch of them around and felt real confident. And next day I went out to Nate Adams' house and flipped a couple in the foam pit, and I'm like, they're all perfect. I'm like, I'm going to dirt. First one was great, and then I don't know, I guess you get used to being in the foam pit, and almost sometimes the best way, if you don't feel like everything's coming around, is to get away from the bike. And I came off the ramp and knew I hit it maybe just a little too fast, and just it didn't feel right. Looking back, I should have just held on to it. I'm pretty sure it would have came right around, but had a little moment of panic and tried to get rid of the bike, and ended up overshooting the jump. And yeah, it was snapped my leg, my right leg snapped and went behind my back, and it broke my arm in half. And but what was crazy is in surgery things went wrong, and I was in surgery for 2 days for about like 17 hours. And when I came out, the opposite leg that they had lifted up out of this way, when they let it down, I had to get a bunch of blood transfusions, and I developed compartment syndrome in the leg that was not injured. And that one got so bad for quite a while they wanted to amputate it, and never regained feeling back in that leg. So that was definitely a kind of a life-changing experience. And one of those things, wish I could take back that day. I don't think I would ever say, oh, I wish I would have never flipped. Just wish I would have landed it.
How hard then, coming out the backside of that, was that, well, one, to get back on a bike, and did you have a direction at that point? Did you know which way you were going to go after that injury?
I really didn't know what I was going to do. It took about 3 years before I could walk properly again. So then that was 2013 was the first year back where I could actually. I still never regained feeling in that foot, but for the longest time I was getting pressure sores on my legs, and I kept going in to get surgeries, get bones shaved down, and rebuild the cartilage in my foot. It was just a long, arduous process. Get my Achilles tendon lengthened, then fuse my ankle, get it in a 90-degree angle. And then 2013, I won a heat race in the 450 class, and then I came real close to winning the X Games Supercross. And then I started to get my confidence back and started to figure out how to ride again and adapt to my new way of riding. And that's when I came over to Australia the first time, and just had a blast, and started won a couple of races, almost won the championship. And then that was kind of, it all came back to me like, wow, I could actually maybe make something of this again.
Before we move on to that part of your career, let's talk about just briefly the biggest race, or in your mind maybe the most memorable, or maybe the fiercest competition, or the best race that you might have had in that time when you were racing the States at that level.
2010 was a really good year for me. Like, just the competition was gnarly that year. We had Bubba, Chad, Dungey, Villapoto, Wyndham was still in it then, Andrew Short. And so I came out swinging. Chad and James had a little run in round 2 and weren't quite, they were beat up and weren't on top of their game that year. And I think that's when us younger kids thought, wow, we could actually win this. And then I think Anaheim 2, had that really big battle with James and was able to pass him. We went back and forth and passed James, and then ended up losing the race because Dungey ended up coming through a couple laps to go and getting both of us. But just that was a pretty, just battling with James Stewart, because just I've ridden with everybody, and I mean Chad is absolutely unreal, but Chad is, you know, he's a very calculated guy, and I could understand how Chad could go fast. I could see him and kind of compute what he was doing, and it was really great to learn from. But James had that something that you'd see that would just occasionally just seem superhuman. So for me to pass him, you know, and to pass him in a set of whoops, I was like, no way, you know, and then to do it in front of a full stadium that's just going nuts, that was probably like my coolest moment.
There's not too many people in the world that can say they've passed James Stewart, full stop. So to be able to do that kind of race, that must have been pretty good.
That was, yeah, it was pretty memorable.
So we'll move on then. You eventually stepped away from racing as a full-time career. What was the thought process? What got you to that point?
I came back. I'd gotten some good races, got on the podium, won some heat races in the States, had some good international wins, and everything was starting to turn around. And then 2015, I just, was right on that bubble of getting a good ride, and came up short, and kind of had to do my own privateer thing. And money I wasn't making a whole lot of money. I was doing okay, but enough to keep it going, enough to fund the program. But I had a big injury at Daytona, broke pretty much my whole rib cage. I had a plate on my collarbone from a previous crash, ripped that off, punctured my lung. And I don't know, it was a big one. But then when I got on the way home, I had to drive all the way from Florida home. I ended up catching pneumonia, and I was like, man, I don't know if this is worth it anymore. This much pain, and I'd already gone through so many injuries and so much stuff that it seemed like maybe I should get away from this lifestyle. So I ended up taking a job with Monster Energy. So I still had my foot in the door a little bit, and started helping with some of like their video projects and things, and doing some stuff with those guys. And after 3 years of being like the two-wheel team manager in the States, they could tell I loved it and still had a passion for it, and still had a certain skill for jumping bikes that not a ton of people had, and they gave me an option to get back riding and racing, mainly riding. And I didn't even know that was a thing, that you could get paid just to ride a bike and occasionally race. So when that came around, that just I don't know, you lose racing, and racing is your life, and then when you don't have that anymore, I wouldn't say I was extremely depressed, but I wouldn't say I was extremely happy either, and when I started riding again, it was just like, I don't know, just started living again. Everything, just my days all started brightening up.
It's funny, isn't it, as a racer, I've experienced it as well. It's not a depression when you don't get that chance to ride, maybe injured out for a long time. But the moment you ride, everything is just like roses and rainbows everywhere. It's just so good a feeling. It brings you back to life.
Yeah, just, waking up and going through the motions and kind of living a normal life was, I loved my time working at Monster Energy, and I had the coolest bosses, hanging out with rad people all the time, but there's just no substitute for being out there and, hitting some big jump or lining up in front of a sold out stadium with 20 other guys that are all, just trying to bash you and take the win. It's just, there's no feeling like it.
So that's a perfect little link to this next part I was going to ask. You're back racing now, but you've also experienced some other stuff. You did a bit of freestyle style riding, snowcross. That's, to me, I don't understand it. How hard is it to do that? We don't have a lot of snow here, so we'll never get to experience that. How hard is it to do something like snowcross?
It's just different. It's I was doing the snow bikes, which is where you take a 450, and they have these kits now that you put on. You just have one ski in the front and then a kit on the back to push through the snow. And it's, you still got the same handlebars, everything still turns the same way, but it almost feels like you're riding with your front brake dragging a little bit. And if you've ever jumped, and grabbed your front brake in the air, it's a very similar feeling. Like you got to get used to it, but it was awesome. It was really fun. In some conditions, up there with riding a dirt bike is how much fun it is. There's, going through the powder and just being able to carve anywhere and hop down the mountain. I mean, it's pretty fun. But it was, when that was an X Games, I was pretty committed to trying to win that. I could never get there. I won some races at some bigger, non-X Games events, but X Games I always came up short.
Moving on to more of the free riding, going back to the early crusty Demons of Dirt days, and you'd watch the riders. I know for myself, we'd watch the videos and you'd see them all out free riding and doing all this cool stuff. A lot of your urban stuff now seems like it's different, but there's that free riding element to it. There's no set up particular jump. You're just out there finding things to hop and have some fun everywhere. That must be pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up, I think I was like 5 years old when Krusty Demons came out, and I'll never forget, just like my parents were watching it and they're like, no, you can't watch this. This is an adult movie. And I was just peeking my head around the corner. And I think that moment changed my life. Just the first time seeing that stuff, like it was just so cool. And then living in Southern California and getting to really experience going out in those same hills and just having this open canvas, like, oh, I could, you get a good group of guys that are just as talented as you and going out there and seeing what you can jump, and just there's no rhyme or reason to it. There's no monetary gain. You're just risking your life for fun, and that, I don't know, it's just it's a good time. And now with the electric bikes, it's kind of opened up that world to now, you kind of, old days of free riding, your bikes are loud, you wake up the whole neighborhood trying to go do something, so you kind of go as far out away from people as you can to go do that stuff. And with the electric bikes, as long as you aren't, harming anybody, you can get away with doing some really fun stuff a lot closer to, to where you live.
The next 10 years is going to be pretty interesting to see how that side of it all evolves as well, right? We're going to have more tracks opening up everywhere. The noise pollution is the big thing. So I think it's going to open up a whole new avenue of motorbike riding. Can't really call it motorbike riding, can you?
Yeah.
Engine biking, electric? Yeah,
dirt biking.
Dirt biking of some sort. Also, the big jump stuff. You said from an early age you like to be a big jumper, which is very cool. The skill level that you have from there has transitioned all the way through. I'd like to think that in my day, when I was a pretty confident jumper, I would like to have thought I could step up to what you guys are doing. Now, as an older guy, watching you guys do these enormous jumps, it blows my mind what you guys are actually doing now.
I think, probably the biggest difference, I think you guys were pushing 252 strokes to about the limit of where you could go, and now it's just, the bikes are so fast, the suspension's so good, and you guys were on carbureted bikes that, I grew up, my first year as pro, I was on carbureted bikes, and it took a completely different set of skills to jump. You always kind of had to anticipate your bike could bog at any point. Now, as good as these bikes are with fuel injection, that's almost out of your mind. And we're able to do some pretty awesome stuff. And the amount of speed we can pull through the dunes now with the power we have, it's like you can go pretty far. I think we're pushing close to 300 feet. I don't know how, maybe just under 100 meters on some of the stuff we're doing, just free riding. And it's just that power, and the stability.
Describe that feeling. I know, again, I keep referencing back to me, but in my day we did some pretty big jumps. It was a pretty cool feeling. But that feeling of those enormous sized jumps, it must be like you're flying, right?
It gets that way. You're up there, you're going as fast as your bike can go, and then, with a downhill run, and then you just have a lip, and then it drops again, and you're just, you're up there, you're gassing it, you're tapping the rear brake, and you're just making the bike, with your power and brake, just stabilize how you want it so you can prepare to, land the best case scenario on the, the landing and just power out. It's pretty wild, and when it goes good and you catch a perfect landing and you just power on out and don't even use all your suspension, that feeling's pretty untouchable from anything I've done outside of motocross.
Let's get back into some racing now. You are getting the opportunity to travel the world. You got World Supercross, you're Australian. You still do some racing back in the States. It must be pretty cool at this point in your career to be able to achieve all this and get out there and do what you love doing.
It's so awesome. For me, it's just I feel so blessed that I've had the support, because this isn't just, it's hard to just show up and buy a bike and go out racing. And for me to have the support to continue to chase these dreams and to do it all over the world is, for me, just, I count my blessings every day from that. And it's, this point in my life, the pressure's, it's basically just what I put on myself and what I know I can accomplish. And it's just been awesome. And then last year in the States, being able to do 17 rounds with my little brother and all of us staying healthy and ending with, him getting on the podium and me getting a 6th place at the final round was pretty cool, being on the track to be able to hug him. He took a few years off and became a police officer in our local town where we grew up. So, both of us took time away and came back and have had success, and that's pretty, most people don't get a second chance. So I feel really blessed that I've been able to.
That'd be pretty special. I know you touched on it then, but to be able to race the whole series with your brother, to get those kind of results, that must be pretty special to be out there on the track at the same time as him.
Oh, it was awesome. And we were on a privateer team. We had Monster Energy backing, and it was the team Teta Racing. And but we weren't a factory supported team. So when we started, we didn't have our stuff together, and we were struggling, and I was struggling just to make it in the main, and he was struggling just to crack the top 15, and we just worked together as a team and kept making the bike better, kept pushing each other, and to end it on that high note was pretty awesome.
You got a couple of podiums, or at least a podium last year at Adelaide for the Australian Series. You're back again this year. Adelaide this year, probably not the best. It was okay. We're here in Newcastle, the next round, much bigger track, a bit more closer to what you're used to. How do you think this weekend's going to play out for you?
I'm looking forward to it. This field last year, it's a full-size Supercross stadium. I think last year's race was probably the closest thing to what we're used to racing in the AMA series is anywhere I've been to in the world. So that was awesome. I look forward to it this weekend, and this weekend with being a Triple Crown, and I believe all 3 motos count as points-paying motos. I'm excited that we have a full-on Supercross track, and I think I could potentially put myself in a position to win the championship if I have a good night tomorrow night.
So then after all this, where to from here for Josh Hill? Are we seeing you around for a few more years yet, continuing on with Supercross the way we're seeing so far?
I think next year I'm going to take a little bit more time to work on some more of the freestyle stuff, do some free ride videos, and but I am going to race in the States, race a few races, and man, if Craig Dack knows anytime he needs a rider to sit on a seat and go race, I'm here. And when I get that call, I take it very seriously. I put everything I can into it because I don't want to disappoint him and waste an opportunity. So when he gives me the call, I prepare and try to come here. So as long as I have that opportunity, I'll be here.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure for me to actually get down and have this chat with you. Thank you so much for your time. Enjoy Australia, and we look forward to seeing how you go tomorrow night here.
Same to you, legend.
Thanks, man. Thank you.
Thank you.